Hello and welcome to episode 47 of the 905er podcast. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this week we're going to have a general discussion on a whole range of stories that are happening in the 905. But we thought we'd do a little bit of housekeeping, I guess, just to start off. Joel, we've been talking for a while about things we can do for our Patreon subscribers.
Absolutely.
And we've got a number of ideas. I mean, not necessarily completely well formed yet, but we're coming up to, believe it or not, our 50th episode, which seems to have happened very quickly, and we're kind of amazed by that. But we've been enjoying the ride, let's put it that way. We thought maybe for our Patreon subscribers for a 50th episode, we'll do some kind of live chat or something like that. We're open to suggestions from you guys, but we're definitely going to do something because it seems like a cause for celebration.
Definitely, and it's something that we want to do just to give back to our Patreon subscribers who have been with us in some cases from day one, and just to maybe get a sense of what goes on behind the scenes and how we come up with each episode, and maybe in some cases put a face to the name.
Yeah, absolutely.
If need be.
I guess another thing we should mention is that just because you haven't mentioned it before, if you listen to us on iTunes, even if you don't listen to us on iTunes and do something else, do please consider giving us a 5-star review on there, because it really, really helps us. And also make sure you spread the word to friends, relatives, anybody who likes shaking their fist at news stories or whatever. That would be huge, and we really appreciate the support of everybody, whether you are a Patreon subscriber or whether you're just a regular listener. So thanks so much for doing that. So with our news stories this week, there's a whole bunch of things that have come up, some of which are predictable, some of which are kind of a surprise. And I guess in the surprise category maybe is the announcement last week by Minister of the Environment, Steve Clark.
No, Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Okay. I'm glad someone's paying attention there. That the province is considering an expansion of the Greenbelt. Why don't you share your thoughts on that one, Joel?
All in all, I'm definitely in favor of expanding the Greenbelt. I think the Greenbelt is a good thing overall, in principle, in practice, and what have you. I question the timing of this announcement by this government, mostly because if our listeners, our loyal listeners, if you remember, a few weeks ago we had on Sarah Buchanan from Environmental Defense onto this podcast to talk about the province's proposed Highway 413, that part of it would cut through the Greenbelt, that would to construct it, and then you'd have all the repercussions afterwards of development and urbanization that comes with building highways. This, at face value, to me, it seems a bit of a bait and switch by this government, that they can go and put in this highway, and at the same time, we'll carve out a chunk of the Greenbelt. We're going to give you equivalent land and then some by expanding the Greenbelt, which is a good thing, but you also have to look at what are we getting for it in return. Now, I heard on the CBC Metro Morning one morning, they had a minister on. He was saying that there are two separate issues to debate. I don't really see how you can. You're giving up some Greenbelt for a project, and if you're saying, oh well, we can add on other acres or hectares of Greenbelt on another part of the province. Is it a case of, is the Greenbelt permanent? Is my question?
It negates the entire point of a greenbelt, which is to stop sprawl. If you just sprawl into the greenbelt and say, well, let's just move the greenbelt, that's not a greenbelt. That's just, we can carry on doing that forever, and sooner or later we'll have the Canadian Shield as being part of the greenbelt. So yeah, that certainly. I know there was as an NDP MPP who said, I'm never going to trust the Conservatives with the environment. And I was like, yeah, nor am I. I don't necessarily. What I do know was that there have been proposals around to expand the Greenbelt since the previous government was in place. So I wonder if this is something that has been kicking around with the non-political staff at the ministry that has been sort of on the back boiler, and was like, hey, can we pull this off the back boiler and make sure that that we get an article in the Star, because we've been having a lot of grief about this highway for the last couple of weeks. So the timing, like you say, is really, really suspicious. That said, good if it happens, but they should do that plus not build the highway. You can't say we're paying for one with the other. That's just not how it's going to go.
Well, that's the thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Though, is the greenbelt permanent, or is it shift? Is it malleable? Are you able to move it depending on what your needs and your wants are, your political wants, and your at the time, which goes in the question of how that's not the point of the greenbelt. The greenbelt is to be permanent and unshifting for this exact reason. I would also point out to our listeners, if you're paying attention to us on social media this past week, we're going to Roland and I are going to be part of a webinar as panelists on Highway 413 happening. Well, by the time you listen to this, it'll be happening tonight through the Community Climate Council in Peel. And so we're hoping to talk about this definitely more in depth and more robustly. We'll have a link to the Eventbrite sign up in our show notes, so please click on that and sign up, and we hope to see you there to discuss this more in depth. What else do we have, Roland?
Well, it's we don't want this to become the Hamilton podcast, but there always seems to be a lot to talk about in Hamilton. There are a couple of things maybe worth mentioning in passing. Actually three things I can think of. So one was there was a discussion last week about a multiplex, which I always thought was a cinema, but apparently coming from Europe was a phrase not known to me, but apparently means that a house that has multiple apartments in it. So it's an application for conversion of a house to be a multiplex. Came to council, and there were several citizens who delegated against that, saying, certainly one of them, who I understand was congratulated by the councillors after his delegation, and basically said, we don't want these dirty renters coming into our neighbourhood because it's the people who own the houses who actually vote and turn up, and we don't want these guys. So it's a pretty disgusting speech. Residents say weird things when they delegate. I guess, you'll hear, that happens, right? So I don't get too worked up about that. But it was disappointing for it not even to be challenged by councillors as to basically a very barefaced sort of opposition to something based on the type of people it would bring into a neighbourhood. And I'm obviously not a fan of that kind of snobbery. It also, the other side of it was that the council then voted to not accept the proposal, even though I believe it was Jason Farr said, well, let's send it to LPAT. Let LPAT sort it out. We know that they will approve it, but then council won't have approved it, so council won't take the heat. Now, sending something to LPAT that you know is going to lose, that you've said openly, because the people making the application can use the councillors' words against them, and you can use staff words against them. And the staff said, you should approve this. The councillor said, we're on a loser here, but let's appeal it. Let's force it to appeal anyway. Those words will be used in the appeal to say, look, these guys aren't even serious. But that will cost the city a minimum of about $20,000. So for the sake of keeping face with a number of voters, probably about 10 voters, the city is willing to blow 20 grand plus. And this is the kind of craziness that goes on. And it's just,
Well, it's a question, like, I don't know. It's a question of why do you want the job, right? Why do you want to be a city councillor? Normal. In an ideal world, you get elected to any level of public office with the intention of, I want to represent my constituents and to serve them and make my community a better place. This is a duck and dodge, I guess is the best way to phrase it. It's sad. I mean, you should be able to say no. The city of Hamilton, every city in the 905 needs more rental options. We need more affordable housing. We need options for people to live and not go into massive amounts of debt. So, this notion of, oh, well, we shouldn't have these people come in and these people, you're right. It is snobbery, to sit there and tell people you can't move into a neighborhood because we don't want their kind. Well,
and the other hypocrisy in this is that these multiplexes already exist. So these are the old Victorian houses that you get in Hamilton that have been rental accommodation for years and years and years, if not decades. But they were created illegally, probably at a time when the city was even more resistant to letting renters into particular neighborhoods. So de facto, they exist. They already exist, and because they were not properly approved, that means there's no the regulations aren't being checked up on. Fire regulations, health and safety, all that stuff doesn't apply to these buildings because technically they don't exist. So by refusing to approve a place, what you're doing is perpetuating that situation of complete lack of regulation and renters potentially being at risk, which is why the LPAT probably will approve it, because all you're doing is recognizing what's already the case. Now you can say, well, these people shouldn't have done something illegal in the first place. Well, we live in a messy world, unfortunately, and that's what happens.
Here's the thing: if they don't tell me that the city didn't know these were happening. Maybe one or two you can say got it, slipped through the cracks. Somebody kept the door shut on it for a while and they were able to get through it. But if it's an epidemic of this scale that you have, that the city council needs to make a decision on this, that's the city's fault. To me, that's the city just fell asleep at the wheel. Nobody cared, and allowed this quasi industry pop up of basically landlords throwing open the door and say, whoever wants to live underneath my roof, pay me this much, and you got a room in my house. You're right. I mean, the city needs to step in. I would argue at this point probably some kind of amnesty to the landlord, because here's the other thing: they can't freeze rents. Normally I'd say fine the landlord an arm and a leg for doing this, but my worry is the landlord's just going to pass the rent down to the tenant, which is not fair to the tenant. And so
I just want to give a credit once again to Joey Coleman, who did a great article on this the other day, and whose information I am mercilessly stealing. But another point he made was that how the city catches these places right now is it goes around looking for people doing who have builders or decorators in. So what that means is the people who run these places who are actually trying to be good, who are trying to improve the property, are the ones who get caught. The real slumlords who don't give a damn can carry on forever untouched by anybody. So, like you say, really, what seems to be required is some kind of amnesty to get everybody out of the woodwork.
Well, just like provide a I would argue like some maybe give a 6 month window or something of amnesty to say come forward, register your place with the city as a tenant, as a proper rental unit or rental building, and that way you're right. You can public inspectors to go in, make sure that they are up to code, fire code, safety regulations, all that stuff for rental units. And then I'm pretty sure that you'd be able to go after the guys who have absolute horrible maintenance levels on their properties. Then you can go after and say, no, you got to fix the fire escape routes, air duct cleaning, all that stuff that to make the place livable. That's where you'd have to. That's where you'd have to clamp down and say, nope, this is what it's going to have to be. I mean, the fact is, the city fell asleep on this at the switch, and yeah, I mean, if you don't want to, it's not an ideal situation, and this is the situation. This is the solution I think you have on your lap to save face. It's a ridiculous situation, but the city has no one to blame but themselves for it.
The prejudice of people against rental accommodation cannot be something that councils are willing to tolerate, because everybody agrees we need more affordable housing. Everybody agrees that it'd be nice not to always put it in high rises. Whatever your view of current development around a province, we need a variety of different housing solutions for people of all income groups. And the minute somewhere comes along that's actually offering 10 units kind of free of charge, basically, because it already exists, the council caves to a couple of people who don't like what they're already living with. I mean, and it's like, well, sure, if it's actually regulated, maybe there'll be better neighbors.
Well, here's the thing. Like, how out of touch with reality do you have to be that say, like, we have a housing crisis in the 905 in Ontario, if not Canada as a whole. Housing is constantly being priced out of affordability for young families. I know we could say millennials, but the fact that the idea of, oh, you graduate university, you work for a little while, you save up, you buy a house, start a family, sell that house and move into a bigger house as your family grows, and you save up enough money, and then you sell it in your retirement, and you live off the proceeds into your golden years. That is a lie today. The system doesn't work like that anymore. That is broken. It is a lie. That's not the way the world works anymore. Right now, if you are a millennial, if you are a young person trying to make a go in the world, chances are home ownership is not going to happen for you. It is one of those life milestones that you might have to face the reality of. I may never get there. At least not living in the 905. I may have to move very, very far out into the country to be able to afford a house ownership. And the problem is we're driving out young families like that, and we need those young families to stay in the 905, stay in Hamilton, in Burlington, in Mississauga, Brampton, Niagara Falls, all those places, because if you live there for a while, you become a citizen of that place. You're invested. You will start businesses. You will run for political office. You will volunteer. You will send your kids to schools in those neighborhoods. You don't do that if you're transient. You don't settle down. You don't become a member of that community if you're thinking, why would I bother? I'm gonna have to pick up and move in 6 months or a year anyways. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to go volunteer. I'm not going to go try and make this a better place to live, because they clearly don't want me here. They don't, they want me out. So I'll leave. I'll go somewhere that does want me. And that's it's not an old story, Roland, but I think it's one that is very common. It pops up every now and again with this millennial bashing, if you will.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I really strongly feel that every city needs to be, and obviously cities vary, but cities need to reflect the society that they're a part of. So that means, it's good to have all income groups living together. That's actually a healthy arrangement. When we live in Burlington, which is, one of the most expensive places in the 905 to live.
In Canada.
Well, yeah. And it's, we know that certainly millennials, it's not easy for those of us who are Gen Xers, to be honest. But the younger generation, they have to move to Hamilton because Hamilton at least does have some affordable housing, or relatively affordable, although it's not, it's not cheap as chips there either. But that's not a good situation. It's not healthy. It's not productive, and it comes with all kinds of social ills. There's a couple of other things we can mention just in passing about Hamilton as well. I mean,
sure.
This week it seemed like Councillor Lloyd Ferguson, who's for Ward 12, I believe, is Ancaster, has joined the more the crazier wing of the Hamilton Council, although it's not so much a wing as an entire country estate. They were discussing statutory sick pay, or paying sick pay, which I believe the councillor would actually receive if he was sick. And he suggested that, of course, this would just encourage people to stay in bed if they were feeling lazy, and it's like, this council is just the worst, man. It's like, where did these dinosaurs come from?
It is. I have many thoughts on this, not on his statement, but on the topic in general of statutory sick days. In my younger years, which weren't that long ago, like I worked for a quick service restaurant that will not be named at the moment, but it's very, very, very popular amongst Canadians. You can infer what that might be if you're listening. But I mean, we were working there when on the front lines when the Liberal government brought in paid sick days, and the worry was, oh my God, like the workers are going to take them and abuse them, and they're just going to call in sick and whatnot. And I'm like, the experience that we had with it was, yeah, probably a couple did. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're no doubt somebody who just woke up and was like, I'm too tired to come into work today. I'm calling in sick. Okay. Well, you get screwed. The thing is, like, you only, it's not that if you get too much. I also saw where it was a good thing. There were you have a single mom who has to stay home because their son or their daughter was sick. They said, I need to stay home. I can't find somebody to come in at the 11th hour. Okay, well, sucks to be me, but to frame it as people are just lazy is so out of touch with what the reality is. I mean, I'm puzzled. Maybe this week is the week of politicians being wildly out of touch with reality, because this statement, and I was thinking of Ted Cruz jumping to Mexico in the middle of like a natural disaster. We heard the same things from the progressive conservatives at the time. Oh, it's you're just going to be lazy and you're promoting people that have to work and all this, and I'm like, it's a shitty ass job. Like, if you think about it, it's a shitty ass job, and the only thing that you get minimum wage, not a lot of perks, and you get shit on a lot by people that would just as well spit on you as to shake your hand. So, you know what? Yeah, allow them to stay home if they're feeling sick. Because here's the other thing, there are times when I did send people home because they were sick. Because I'm like, I don't want you coughing on me. That's gross.
Well,
Go
when you're
home.
in a food services, for goodness sake, and I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this has become to center stage because of COVID and the fact that people are going to work because they need the money when they shouldn't be going to work, which is an unforgivable situation. The thing that actually drives me craziest about this, and this is a general malaise of politicians and media and around the world. I mean, I've noticed that I've only lived in 2 countries, but in both countries I've seen it. We're talking about statutory sick pays as if, or as paid sick days, or whatever you want to call it, as if this is an idea that no one anywhere else in the world has ever considered before.
Yeah.
The whole of Europe, basically, I had no idea that not getting paid when you're sick was an option. It's the first job I ever had, which was a pretty terrible job. Paid, I think I earned about £6,000 a year, my first job, which is not a lot. Even back then was not a lot. If I was sick, I went home and I got paid. And if I started off with about 3 weeks vacation, or certainly 2 weeks. My vacation was paid too. That was just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
In that part of the world, and no one ever questioned it because it's like, well, you're paying, that's the price of it is to employ someone. To employ a good employee is you provide these other aspects, and yeah, for goodness sake, we're past the point where we want people going into work when they're ill. It's just craziness. And the point I was going to make was that Hamilton Council actually has a really bad absenteeism problem, and they often are struggling to find quorum because I don't know about half the councillors, I don't know what their quorum is, but a bunch of councillors don't turn up, or they turn up late. I don't believe I've come across this in other cities, that this is something that happens, that councillors don't turn up habitually to council meetings. So maybe that's where it's coming from, that the councillor likes to stay in bed sometimes. I don't know, he's speaking from experience, but certainly he's talking about denying something that he has himself.
All their council meetings are held on Zoom, so it literally should just be like roll into bed, comb your hair, and click on the computer,
Right.
and
and
you're good to go
for a meeting. You don't even have to leave the house.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it comes back to the notion of, do you want the job? We were talking, a few minutes ago about deferring an actual council decision to LPAP because, we might offend somebody, or we might have to actually take a position on this. And, you wonder, like, why do you want the job, other than the fact that you just want to be called city, I'm a city councillor. Behold my glory. I am a city councillor of Hamilton, and, all bow down before me, which is, you and I have gone on ad nauseum about exactly the wrong reasons to run for any political office, is because you want the accolades and the glory and the streets named after you. It's like, if you want all that stuff, you fucking earn it. Like, bust your butt to put forward a real agenda and make people's lives better. It angers me hearing that kind of talk of just how out of touch you are with the average person's life. And don't tell me that they're lazy, that they're stupid, that they don't deserve it. And, they might abuse it. Yeah, you know what? They might abuse it. Also, they might just be sitting there going like, you know what? I am mentally just not there. I am done. I need a day off. And because I'm also working 2 other jobs to put a roof over my head. And you know what? This one job, this is the one I'm not making this shift. It's just, I can't do it. I got to break because I gotta. So I'm calling in sick. Sorry.
Yeah, but the infuriating thing is, like, I know there are good people who in politics, or who would like to enter politics, who get scared off when they see this. And I say, well, why would I can go and earn my money somewhere else. If you're a talented enough person, you can probably make a living doing other things. You don't have to beat your head against a brick wall going into politics. And there are people who are in politics who the good ones go, why am I? Do I really want to do this? And that's a
The good ones
tragedy
I
because we're
find, the
weeding
good ones
out.
you have to pull kicking and screaming into political life.
Yeah,
You got to really just kick them into the fray. And it's, yeah, I mean, it angers me just why, to just somebody who needs a day off, who needs a chance to heal, and you want to paint them as lazy and entitled and all that stuff. And then, quite frankly, I'm like, at this point, I like to say, you know what, the ones who are lazy and entitled, chances are the ones in power.
the there's no doubt politics and municipal politics in particular seems to do weird things to people's heads. And the longer you're in there, the more likely it is that it's done something weird to your head. And this culture of you cannot criticize us, you cannot question us, we know better. Meanwhile, these people are profoundly ill qualified. I mean, the same goes for school board trustees. I mean, I've been on a bit of a rant about them like lately, but there are really good school board trustees. There are really good councillors, but there are far too many who have no business being in those positions because they are shockingly bad. And it's not a partisan point. It's some of the people who get attracted to that job and the ones who stick around longest and are willing to put up with it. And again, I'm not generalizing. I know there are exceptions. People have been counselors for decades who are great. But we also know, and they know, that there are some serious exceptions to that rule. And ultimately, it does come back to us as citizens that we really suck at paying attention to what they're up to. Because the minute you start paying attention, it's like, my goodness.
Yeah.
We were fairly well involved in various aspects of the political system for many years. There's still been an eye opener since we've been doing this to pay more attention to other cities, and particularly Hamilton, which has all sorts of problems at the moment, and to see the scale of issues. It's
part of the problem
amazing.
is that the behavior turns off people. It is so easy when you hear behavior like this and you see real policy issues that go up for debate end up getting pushed to the side because of councillors' bad behavior. And you, as a citizen, you kind of shake your head and you just, I'm going to take the other side there and say, like, I can understand people just getting fed up saying, I'm walking away. Why am I going to, what's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, but you expect a different result each time. I think that's what people feel like when in the political system is, I want change. I want not drastic change. I just want my life to get better. I want somebody to do something that says, hey, this helps me out. And you look time and time again, and at every level you get some form of disappointment.
I think for both of us, probably we're both people who have wanted to contribute in some way to the betterment of wherever it is we live. Which is not to say we do have no right to expect to get anywhere, but I do think it says something that I ran once for council, and I thought, I did fairly well. I didn't win, no big deal. Maybe I'll do it again in 4 years. And what became very apparent to me in the interim was that City Hall does not want engaged citizens. It really would prefer to close the door on you. And even someone like me, who is not like Mr. Confrontation, or I will state my opinion, but I hope I say it fairly politely most of the time. The reaction and the hostility and the ridiculousness you end up facing is like, I want nothing to do with this place ever again. This is dreadful. And that, again, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet and say that I somehow deserve to have a red carpet laid out for me, but I do feel that it's probably not the way it should go, that someone like me who wants to contribute ends up feeling utterly insulted, defeated, and unwanted in the political process. Not just as a citizen, as someone who I just want to help. I just want to make my community a tiny little bit better, and that'll make me feel good, and hopefully it will help the community. And basically to get, a very firm middle finger directed at you, to say, no, go away. Shut up. We're fine. It's a tragedy, and it's a tragedy because it's far more people than just me. It's so many people of skill and talent and intelligence who just go, screw this,
But you know what? At the end of the day, this is a democracy, and the only way to change it is through our vote and our organization. It's hard to organize against a general sense of malaise and a general sense of defeatism, but it's what you have to do. It's if you want to get change done, you have to find other people who are like-minded, who are passionate about it as you, and move forward on it. And if you have to, do it at the ballot box. I still say it's a pencil and a sheet of paper is far more effective than any army or military force could ever be these days.
Well, I think, voting certainly works, but what works just as well, and which is just as important, is what you do between those times of voting. That
yes,
I'm more and more convinced that, we were saying to someone the other day on the phone, it really doesn't take much to get a politician's attention. The idea that politicians aren't listening is the biggest lie ever. They listen much. Like 3 or 4 people changed a council decision the other day in Hamilton. Now, that decision may have been bad, but that's democracy in action in its own way. 3 or 4 people turned up and said, we don't like X. And the councillor said, wow, thank you very much for your delegation. We agree. It doesn't always go that way. It very much depends which neighbourhood you're from and, things like that as to how much they listen. But you send a letter to your MPP or your MP, boy, do they pay attention to that stuff. So it doesn't take a lot, but it takes a little bit more than we have been, as a society, been managing to pull off in recent decades, I think. And I mean, that's part of the reason I think we decided to do this podcast. It's like, well, no one wants to listen to us inside these places. Maybe there's a couple of people who listen to us.
Maybe someone wants to listen outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that will have some effect, some positive effect, I'm seeing that we've come up to the 40 minutes point. We've still got a few more items we could talk about, but maybe we should move those over to our Thursday episode when we'll be reporting back on the event that we're doing on Tuesday night, and various other things, no doubt.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks everybody. That's it for today, and make sure you tune back in on Thursday to hear all the other exciting things which are happening around the 905.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.